Tenant collective reports landlord missing after final rent hike meeting, but lease auto payments keep posting from his phone's geotagged cliffside selfies. I step out of my car into the October rain, the drops hitting my windshield like tiny bullets against glass. The Riverside Gardens apartment complex looms before me, its brick facade darkened by moisture and neglect. 3 days ago, I was just another private investigator working insurance fraud cases. Now I'm standing in the middle of what might be the strangest missing person case I've ever encountered. The call came from Maria Santos, president of the Riverside Tenants Collective. Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd fought too many battles with slumlords and property management companies. "Detective Chen," she'd said, though I'd corrected her that I was private, not police. "Our landlord disappeared right after our final meeting about the rent increases. But here's the thing that's got us all spooked. His phone is still making the lease payments. I'd handled plenty of cases where people vanished to avoid debts or responsibilities. What made this different was the digital trail. According to Maria, automated payments were still posting to their tenant portal every month, right on schedule. The payments came from Vincent Castellano's phone, complete with geotagged photos he'd apparently been taking at various clifftop locations around the county. The building superintendent, a weathered man named Frank who'd worked here for 15 years, meets me at the entrance. His hands shake slightly as he lights a cigarette. Mr. Castellano was supposed to meet with the tenants on September 15th, he tells me. Big meeting about the rent hikes. 30% increases across the board. People were furious. I follow Frank through the lobby, noting the peeling wallpaper and the broken intercom system. This is exactly the kind of place where landlords squeeze every penny from tenants while letting the property decay. The elevator groans as we ride to the 3rd floor, where Castellano kept his on-site office. "He never showed up to that meeting," Frank continues. "Maria and about 20 other tenants waited in the community room for 2 hours. They were ready for a fight, you know? Had all their documentation about housing code violations, rent control laws, everything. The office door stands slightly ajar. Inside, Castellano's desk remains exactly as he left it. Coffee cup with a ring of mold around the rim. Stack of eviction notices half signed. A calendar with September 15th circled in red ink. The words "final meeting" written in aggressive capital letters. But here's where it gets strange. Frank shows me the building's payment system on Castellano's computer. Every month since his disappearance, the mortgage payments, utility bills, and maintenance contracts have been paid automatically. The transactions all originate from his mobile device, and each payment confirmation includes a timestamp and GPS coordinates. "Look at this," Frank says, pointing to the screen. The most recent payment, made just yesterday, shows coordinates that place Castellano's phone at Devil's Backbone Trail, a notorious clifftop hiking area about 40 miles north of here. Attached to the payment confirmation is a selfie, a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly behind him. I study the photo carefully. The timestamp reads 3:47 a.m., which strikes me as an odd time for a scenic selfie. The lighting is artificial, probably from the phone's flash, and Castellano's expression looks more haunted than peaceful. His eyes seem to be looking past the camera, as if he's seeing something the rest of us can't. Maria Santos arrives as I'm examining the payment records. She's a small woman with steel in her voice and calloused hands that speak of years working multiple jobs to make rent. "We've been trying to reach him for weeks," she says. "His property management company claims they haven't heard from him either, but those payments keep coming through like clockwork." She hands me a folder thick with documentation. Rent increase notices, building code violations, correspondence with the City Housing Authority. The picture that emerges is of a landlord under increasing pressure from both tenants and regulatory agencies. Castellano had been facing thousands of dollars in fines for safety violations, and the tenant collective had been organizing a rent strike. "The night before our meeting, he called me," Maria says. "It was late, maybe 11 o'clock. He sounded different, scared maybe. He kept saying something about how he'd found a way to make everything right, that we'd understand soon enough." I ask her about the automated payments, whether anyone else might have access to Castellano's phone or banking information. She shakes her head. That's what makes this so creepy. Those selfies, they're definitely him. But where is he taking them from? And why is he still paying our bills if he's trying to disappear? Frank leads me to the basement, where Castellano kept additional files and records. The air down here is thick with the smell of mold and dampness. Water stains mark the walls, evidence of the plumbing problems that tenants have been complaining about for months. In a metal filing cabinet, I find Castellano's personal records. His financial situation was worse than I'd expected. Multiple loans against the property, mounting legal fees from tenant disputes, and a recent divorce that had cost him half his assets. The man was drowning in debt, which would normally point toward voluntary disappearance. But the continued payments suggest something else entirely. His financial situation was worse than I'd expected. Multiple loans against the property, mounting legal fees from tenant disputes, and a recent divorce that had cost him half his assets. The man was drowning in debt, which would normally point toward voluntary disappearance. But the continued payments suggest something else entirely. As I'm photographing the financial documents, my phone buzzes with a text from Maria. Another payment just went through. GPS shows he's at Sunset Cliffs now. Photo attached. I open the image and feel a chill run down my spine. It's Castellano again, but this time he's not alone in the photo. Standing in the shadow of a figure I can't quite make out, Castellano's face shows the same haunted expression as before. The timestamp reads 4:23 a.m., and the GPS coordinates place him at Sunset Cliffs, a popular but dangerous area where the sandstone erodes constantly into the churning Pacific below. But it's the second figure that makes my blood run cold. The shadow appears human but distorted, as if the camera caught someone mid-movement. I can make out what looks like an outstretched arm, but the angle and lighting make it impossible to determine if this person is helping Castellano or threatening him. The more I stare at the image, the more questions multiply in my mind. I call Maria back immediately. When did this payment come through? 20 minutes ago, she says. Same as always, rent for all 42 units, plus the building maintenance fees. But Detective Chen, there's something else. Mrs. Rodriguez in 3B says she saw lights in Mr. Castellano's office last night around midnight. The building was supposed to be locked. Frank overhears the conversation and shakes his head vigorously. Impossible. I've got the only master key, and I was home all night. Besides, the office has been sealed since the police did their initial sweep 2 weeks ago. But as we head back upstairs, I notice something that makes me pause. The office door, which had been slightly ajar when I first arrived, now stands completely open. The coffee cup I'd noted earlier, the one with the moldy ring, has been moved to the opposite side of the desk. Someone has definitely been here recently. I examine the office more carefully this time, looking for signs of recent activity. The computer shows no new login attempts, but the filing cabinet that Frank had locked after my first visit now hangs open. Several folders are missing, including the one containing Castellano's correspondence with his ex-wife and legal team. Frank, you said you locked this cabinet after I looked through it yesterday. His face goes pale. I did. I swear I did. Used the same key Mr. Castellano gave me when he hired me. Maria joins us in the office, and I show her the latest selfie on my phone. She studies it intently, then points to something I'd missed. Look at the background. That's not just any part of Sunset Cliffs. That's the exact spot where Tommy Nguyen fell last year. The name hits me like a physical blow. Tommy Nguyen had been a tenant in this very building, a young man who'd been organizing resistance to Castellano's previous rent increases. The official report listed his death as accidental, a late-night fall from the unstable cliff edge. But the tenant collective had always suspected something more sinister. Tommy was supposed to testify at a housing court hearing about the building's safety violations. Maria continues. He documented everything: the broken fire escapes, the faulty electrical work, the mold in the basement. 3 days before the hearing, they found his body on the rocks below Sunset Cliffs. I feel the pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to form, but the picture they're creating is darker than I'd anticipated. Did Castellano know Tommy personally? They'd had several confrontations, Frank admits reluctantly. Tommy was always filing complaints, taking pictures of violations. Mr. Castellano said he was a troublemaker, but the kid was just trying to make the building safer for everyone. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzes again. Another payment notification, this one timestamped just minutes ago. The GPS coordinates show a location I recognize immediately: Torrey Pines State Beach, about 15 miles south of Sunset Cliffs. But this time, there's no selfie attached. Instead, there's a voice message. I put the phone on speaker, and Castellano's voice fills the small office. But something is wrong with the audio. His words come out distorted, as if he's speaking through water or from a great distance. The payments will continue as long as necessary. The building is safe now. Everyone is safe now. The message cuts off abruptly, leaving us in stunned silence. Frank's cigarette has burned down to his fingers without him noticing. Maria grips the edge of the desk, her knuckles white with tension. "That didn't sound like him," she whispers. "I mean, it was his voice, but the way he was talking, it was like he was reading from a script." I replay the message several times, noting the strange pauses and the mechanical quality of his speech. There's something else too, a background noise that sounds almost like waves crashing against rocks. If Castellano is at Torrey Pines Beach, that would make sense. But the timestamp shows the message was recorded at 5:15 a.m., well before sunrise. Frank suddenly grabs my arm. "Detective, there's something I haven't told you. The night Mr. Castellano disappeared, I saw him leaving the building around 10 o'clock. But he wasn't alone. There was someone with him, a tall man in a dark coat. I couldn't see his face, but they seemed to know each other." "Why didn't you mention this before?" "Because the next morning, that same man came to my apartment. He knew things about me, about my family. He said it would be better for everyone if I kept certain details to myself." The temperature in the room seems to drop several degrees. I'm no longer dealing with a simple missing person case or even a potential suicide. Someone is actively working to cover up what happened to Vincent Castellano, and they're using his own phone to maintain the illusion that he's still alive. But as I'm processing this information, Maria's phone rings. She answers it with shaking hands, and I can hear a familiar voice on the other end. It's Castellano, but once again, the audio quality is wrong. The words are clear, but they lack any human warmth or emotion. "Maria, I want you to know that the rent increases are canceled. The building will be sold to a non-profit housing organization within the month. Please tell the other tenants that their homes are secure." The line goes dead before Maria can respond. We stare at each other in the growing darkness of the office, each of us afraid to voice what we're all thinking. Someone is using Vincent Castellano's phone to tie up loose ends. But if Castellano is dead, who's been taking those selfies? The next morning brings no relief from the questions multiplying in my mind. I arrive at the Riverside Gardens complex before dawn, hoping to catch whoever has been accessing Castellano's office. The parking lot is empty except for a few tenant vehicles and a dark sedan I don't recognize. Its license plate is obscured by mud, which in this dry October weather seems deliberately applied. I position myself across the street with a clear view of the building's entrance. At 6:30 a.m., I watch as a tall figure in a dark coat emerges from the building's side entrance, the same entrance that's supposed to be locked and alarmed. The figure moves with purpose, checking his phone before climbing into the dark sedan and driving away. My phone buzzes with another payment notification. This time, the GPS coordinates place Castellano at La Jolla Cove, and the attached selfie shows him standing on the rocky shoreline. But something about the image bothers me beyond the usual strangeness. The lighting is wrong for the timestamp of 6:45 a.m. The sky behind him shows the deep blue of late evening, not the pale gray of dawn. I call Detective Sarah Morrison, my former partner from my days with the San Diego Police Department. If anyone can help me navigate the official channels of this case, it's her. She agrees to meet me at a coffee shop near the precinct, and I bring copies of all the payment records and photos. "This is seriously messed up," she says after reviewing the evidence. We did a preliminary investigation when the tenants first reported him missing, but these payment records weren't part of the original case file. Someone's been keeping this information from us. She pulls up the official missing person report on her laptop. According to the file, Vincent Castellano was last seen leaving his apartment building on September 14th at approximately 10 p.m. The report notes that he was under significant financial stress and facing multiple lawsuits from tenants. The investigating officer concluded that he'd likely left voluntarily to avoid his mounting legal problems. But look at this, Sarah says, pointing to a section of the report I hadn't seen before. The officer who filed this report was Detective Marcus Webb. He retired suddenly 3 weeks after Castellano's disappearance, took early retirement and moved to Arizona without giving notice. The name Webb triggers a memory. I'd worked with him on a few cases years ago, and he'd always struck me as thorough and professional. For him to retire so abruptly suggests he either found something he didn't want to pursue or was encouraged to stop looking. Sarah agrees to help me track down Webb's contact information, but in the meantime, she wants to examine Castellano's phone records more closely. The automated payments are all being processed through a mobile banking app, which means someone would need physical access to his phone or sophisticated hacking capabilities. There's something else, she says. I ran the GPS coordinates from those selfies through our database. 3 of the locations match sites where we've had suspicious deaths or disappearances in the past 2 years. All of them involved people who were fighting landlords or property developers. The pattern is becoming impossible to ignore. Tommy Nguyen at Sunset Cliffs. A housing activist named Jennifer Walsh found dead at Torrey Pines Beach 6 months ago. An elderly tenant named Robert Chen who fell from the cliffs at La Jolla Cove after organizing a rent strike in his building. Sarah, I think we're looking at a serial killer who targets tenant organizers. And somehow, Vincent Castellano got caught up in it. She nods grimly. Or Castellano was part of it, and now he's become a liability. We decide to visit the La Jolla Cove location where this morning's selfie was supposedly taken. The drive takes us along the coastal highway, past multimillion-dollar homes and luxury resorts. The contrast with the decaying Riverside Gardens complex couldn't be more stark. At La Jolla Cove, we find the exact spot from the selfie. The rocky outcropping is accessible but dangerous, especially in the dark. Sarah examines the area while I study the photo more carefully on my phone. That's when I notice something that makes my stomach drop. In the background of the selfie, barely visible in the shadows, is what looks like a memorial plaque. I scramble over the rocks to get a closer look, and my worst fears are confirmed. The plaque reads, "In memory of Robert Chen, beloved father and community advocate, 1952 to 2024. Sarah, Castellano's phone took this selfie at the exact spot where Robert Chen died. This isn't a coincidence." She joins me at the memorial, and we both stare at the small bronze plaque mounted on the cliff face. "Someone is sending a message," she says. "But to whom?" As if in answer to her question, my phone rings. The caller ID shows Vincent Castellano's number, but I'm no longer surprised by this. I answer on speaker so Sarah can hear. "Detective Chen." The voice is Castellano's, but the mechanical quality is even more pronounced than before. "You need to stop investigating. The tenants are safe now. The building is safe now. Everyone is safe now. Where are you, Vincent? I am where I need to be. The payments will continue. The building will be sold. No one else needs to get hurt." The line goes dead, leaving Sarah and me staring at each other in the growing morning light. The waves crash against the rocks below, and I can't help but think about Robert Chen's final moments in this exact spot. "He's not making those calls," Sarah says quietly. "Someone is using voice synthesis technology. They've probably got hours of recorded conversations to work with. But if Castellano is dead, why go to such elaborate lengths to maintain the illusion that he's alive?" The answer comes to me with sickening clarity. Someone needs time to clean up loose ends, to make sure that whatever happened to Vincent Castellano can never be traced back to them. And I'm starting to realize that by investigating this case, I may have put myself and everyone I've talked to in serious danger. Sarah and I drive back toward the city in tense silence, both of us processing the implications of what we've discovered. The voice synthesis technology explains the mechanical quality of Castellano's recent calls, but it raises even more disturbing questions. Someone with significant resources and technical capabilities is orchestrating this elaborate deception. My phone buzzes with a text from Maria Santos. Emergency tenant meeting tonight at 7. Someone broke into Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment last night. Nothing stolen, but they went through all her papers about the rent strike. The escalation is unmistakable. Whoever is behind this is no longer content to simply maintain the illusion of Castellano's continued existence. They're actively intimidating the tenants who might have information about what really happened. Sarah drops me off at my office with a promise to dig deeper into Detective Webb's sudden retirement. I spend the afternoon researching the other suspicious deaths she mentioned, looking for connections beyond their involvement in tenant organizing. What I find makes the pattern even more chilling. Jennifer Walsh, the housing activist found dead at Torrey Pines Beach, had been investigating a property development company called Coastal Holdings. Robert Chen had filed complaints against the same company for attempting to buy his building through intimidation tactics. Tommy Nguyen had been documenting safety violations in buildings owned by Coastal Holdings subsidiaries. I pull up the corporate records for Coastal Holdings and immediately recognize one of the names on the board of directors. Marcus Webb, the detective who handled Castellano's missing person case and then retired abruptly. The same Webb who's now living comfortably in Arizona, far from the scene of his former investigations. The pieces are falling into place with terrifying clarity. Webb wasn't just a corrupt cop who looked the other way. He was actively involved in silencing people who threatened Coastal Holdings' business interests. And Vincent Castellano, despite being a landlord himself, had somehow become a target. I call Sarah with this information, but her phone goes straight to voicemail. A cold dread settles in my stomach as I realize that by involving her in this investigation, I may have put her in the same danger that claimed the others. At 6:45 p.m., I arrive at the Riverside Gardens community room for the tenant meeting. The atmosphere is electric with fear and anger. About 30 residents have gathered, their faces showing the strain of weeks of uncertainty and intimidation. Maria stands at the front of the room, holding a stack of papers. Mrs. Rodriguez found these scattered on her kitchen table this morning, she announces. Someone had gone through every document she had about our rent strike, our complaints to the housing authority, everything. She holds up a photograph that makes my blood run cold. It's a surveillance photo of the tenant meeting from September 15th. The meeting Castellano never attended. But someone was watching from across the street, documenting everyone who participated. There's more, Maria continues. Mr. Patterson in 1A got a phone call this morning. The voice claimed to be Mr. Castellano, saying that anyone who continued to cause trouble would face the same consequences as Tommy Nguyen. The room erupts in angry voices. These people have been living in fear for weeks, not knowing whether their landlord was dead or alive, whether their homes were secure, whether they were safe. The revelation that someone is actively threatening them pushes their fear into rage. Frank raises his hand from the back of the room. I need to tell you all something I should have said weeks ago. His voice shakes as he speaks. The night Mr. Castellano disappeared, I saw him leave with someone, a tall man in a dark coat. The next day, that same man came to my apartment and threatened my family if I talked to the police. Did you recognize him? Asked. Frank nods slowly. I've seen him before. He used to come around the building sometimes, always late at night, always meeting with Mr. Castellano in private. I think his name was Webb. The confirmation hits me like a physical blow. Webb had been working with Castellano, probably pressuring him to evict the tenant organizers or sell the building to Coastal Holdings. But something had gone wrong. Maybe Castellano had developed a conscience, or maybe he'd become a liability. My phone buzzes with another payment notification. This time, the GPS coordinates place Castellano at Black's Beach, a remote and dangerous stretch of coastline north of the city. But there's no selfie attached this time. Instead, there's a video message. I hesitate before playing it, knowing that whatever I'm about to see will change everything. The video shows Castellano standing on a narrow ledge above the crashing waves. but his movements are wrong, jerky, and unnatural, as if he's being controlled like a puppet. The final payment has been made, his voice says, but the words don't match his lip movements. The building sale is complete. No one needs to look for me anymore. The video cuts off abruptly, but not before I catch a glimpse of something that makes my heart stop. In the reflection of Castellano's eyes, barely visible but unmistakably there, is the face of another man. A man holding what looks like a gun. The room has gone completely silent. Everyone is staring at my phone, processing what they've just witnessed. Maria is the first to speak. He's not making these videos willingly, is he? Before I can answer, the lights in the community room suddenly go out. In the darkness, I hear the sound of the building's main entrance opening, followed by heavy footsteps in the hallway outside. Someone is coming for us, and we're trapped. The footsteps grow closer, echoing through the hallway with deliberate menace. I motion for everyone to stay quiet and move toward the back of the community room, where a fire exit should provide an escape route. But as I reach for the door handle, I discover it's been chained shut from the outside. We're trapped, exactly as someone intended. The footsteps stop directly outside the community room door. In the darkness, I can hear the soft click of a key being inserted into the lock. Whoever is out there has access to the building, just like the person who's been entering Castellano's office. I pull out my phone and dial 911, but there's no signal. Someone is jamming the cell towers in this area, which means this isn't a spontaneous attack. It's been carefully planned and executed by people with serious resources. The door opens slowly, and a beam of flashlight cuts through the darkness. Behind it, I can make out the silhouette of a tall man in a dark coat. Frank was right. This is the same person who threatened him weeks ago. Detective Chen, the man says, and I recognize the voice immediately. It's Marcus Webb, the former police detective who's supposed to be retired in Arizona. You should have listened to the warnings. He steps into the room, and I can see that he's not alone. Two other men follow him, both carrying what look like tasers. They're not here to kill us outright. They want us alive and compliant. Where is Vincent Castellano? I demand, trying to keep my voice steady. Webb laughs, a sound devoid of any warmth. Mr. Castellano is exactly where he needs to be. He's been very cooperative in helping us resolve the tenant situation here. The voice synthesis, the fake selfies. We know he's not making those calls. Technology is a wonderful thing, Webb says. We've got hours of recorded conversations with Mr. Castellano. Enough to keep his digital presence active for years if necessary. Maria steps forward from the group of terrified tenants. What did you do to him? Mr. Castellano made a business decision, Webb replies. He agreed to sell this building to Coastal Holdings at a very reasonable price. In exchange, we've ensured that his financial obligations to you tenants continue to be met. But I can see the lie in his eyes. Castellano didn't agree to anything. He was coerced, threatened, or worse. The video I saw earlier, the reflection of a gun in his eyes, tells the real story. You killed him, I say, just like you killed Tommy Nguyen, Jennifer Walsh, and Robert Chen. Webb's expression doesn't change. Accidents happen to people who don't understand the realities of property development. Mr. Castellano was smart enough to cooperate before things got that far. One of his associates moves toward the group of tenants, taser raised. We need to relocate everyone to a more secure location while we finalize the building's sale. I realize with growing horror what they're planning. They're going to eliminate all the witnesses, everyone who knows about the fake payments, the suspicious circumstances of Castellano's disappearance, the pattern of deaths among tenant organizers. But as Webb's associate reaches for Maria, the lights suddenly flicker back on. In the doorway stands Sarah Morrison, her service weapon drawn and pointed directly at Webb's chest. San Diego police, she announces. Everyone on the ground now. Webb spins toward her, reaching for something inside his coat, but Sarah is faster. Don't even think about it, Marcus. I've got backup surrounding the building. But Webb smiles coldly. No, Detective Morrison, you don't. Your department thinks you're at home with the flu. No one knows you're here. The realization hits me like a physical blow. Sarah came here alone, without backup, without telling anyone where she was going. She's walked into the same trap that caught the rest of us. You always were too curious for your own good, Webb continues. Just like your partner here. Some investigations are better left alone. Sarah keeps her weapon trained on Webb, but I can see the uncertainty in her eyes. She's outnumbered and outgunned, and Webb knows it. Here's what's going to happen, Webb says. Detective Morrison is going to lower her weapon and join the rest of you. Then we're all going to take a little trip to the coast. There are some beautiful cliffs up there where people sometimes have tragic accidents. The pieces of his plan become clear. He's going to stage our deaths to look like a group suicide or accident, probably at one of the same clifftop locations where he killed the others. The tenant collective, overwhelmed by their landlord's disappearance and the stress of fighting eviction, decided to end it all together. But as Webb reaches for Sarah's weapon, I notice something he's missed. Frank has been slowly moving toward the emergency fire axe mounted on the wall behind him. If I can create enough of a distraction, he might be able to reach it. You made one mistake, Webb, I say loudly. Vincent Castellano isn't dead. Webb freezes, his attention fully focused on me. What are you talking about? The video message tonight. I saw the reflection in his eyes. He's still alive and he's being held somewhere. When the police find him, he's going to tell them everything about Coastal Holdings, about the murders, about your whole operation. For the first time, I see genuine fear in Webb's eyes. If Castellano is still alive and talking, everything Webb has built will come crashing down. And in that moment of distraction, Frank makes his move. Frank's hand closes around the fire axe handle just as Webb realizes what's happening. The former detective spins toward him, but Frank is already swinging the heavy tool in a wide arc. The blade catches Webb in the shoulder, sending him stumbling backward with a cry of pain and rage. Sarah doesn't waste the opportunity. She lunges forward and tackles one of Webb's associates. Her police training evident in the fluid way she disarms him and pins him to the ground. The second associate raises his taser toward her, but Maria Santos proves that years of fighting slumlords has given her nerves of steel. She grabs a folding chair and brings it down on his head with enough force to drop him instantly. Webb clutches his bleeding shoulder, his face twisted with fury and desperation. You have no idea what you're interfering with, he snarls. Coastal Holdings has contracts worth hundreds of millions. They won't let a few dead tenants stop them. Then they can explain that to a federal grand jury, Sarah says, keeping her weapon trained on him while she calls for backup on her radio. But Webb isn't finished. With his good arm, he pulls out a small device that looks like a garage door opener. Vincent Castellano is being held at a warehouse on Harbor Drive, he says. If I don't check in every 12 hours, my associates have orders to dispose of him permanently. The threat hangs in the air like poison. Even captured, Webb still holds Castellano's life in his hands. But I can see something in his eyes that gives me hope, the desperation of a man whose carefully constructed plan is falling apart. You're bluffing, I say. If Castellano dies, you lose your only leverage. Coastal Holdings needs him alive to maintain the illusion that the building sale was legitimate. Webb's expression confirms my suspicion. Castellano isn't just a witness to be eliminated. He's a crucial part of their ongoing deception. His digital presence, the automated payments, the fake selfies, all of it depends on keeping him alive long enough to complete the property transfer. Within minutes, the community room fills with police officers and paramedics. Sarah takes charge of the scene with professional efficiency, but I can see the toll this case has taken on her. We've uncovered a conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of local government and business, with tentacles that stretch across multiple jurisdictions. As Webb is loaded into an ambulance under police guard, he makes one final attempt to salvage his situation. Detective Morrison, he calls out, check the basement of the warehouse. You'll find more than just Vincent Castellano down there. The implication is chilling. How many other victims has Webb's organization been holding? How many other tenant organizers and housing activists have disappeared into Coastal Holdings' web of corruption and violence? The warehouse on Harbor Drive turns out to be a converted shipping facility with a maze of underground storage areas. When the SWAT team breaches the building, they find Vincent Castellano chained to a chair in a makeshift recording studio. He's alive but barely conscious, his body showing signs of weeks of physical and psychological torture. But Webb was right about one thing: Castellano isn't the only victim they find. In adjacent rooms, they discover the bodies of 3 other people who had been investigating Coastal Holdings' business practices. Jennifer Walsh, the housing activist supposedly killed in an accident at Torrey Pines Beach, had actually been murdered in this basement weeks before her body was dumped at the cliff site. The scope of the conspiracy becomes clear as federal investigators take over the case. Coastal Holdings had been systematically eliminating anyone who threatened their aggressive property acquisition strategy. They used Webb's position in the police department to cover up the murders, staging them as accidents or suicides at scenic clifftop locations. Vincent Castellano, despite being a landlord himself, had become a target when he refused to sell the Riverside Gardens building at the artificially low price Coastal Holdings demanded. His conscience had finally gotten the better of him, and he'd planned to use the September 15th tenant meeting to announce that he was canceling the rent increases and working with the tenants to improve building conditions. Webb and his associates had kidnapped Castellano the night before the meeting, forcing him to record hours of audio and video content that they later used to create the synthetic messages and fake selfies. The automated payments were designed to buy time while they eliminated the tenant organizers and completed the forced sale of the building. 3 months later, I stand in the renovated community room of the Riverside Gardens complex, watching as Maria Santos cuts the ribbon on the building's new tenant-owned cooperative. Vincent Castellano, still recovering from his ordeal but determined to make amends, had donated his ownership stake to the tenants rather than sell to another developer. The case against Coastal Holdings and their network of corrupt officials eventually encompasses 17 murders across 3 states. Webb, facing multiple life sentences, finally agrees to cooperate with federal prosecutors in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. But as I watch the celebration in the community room, I can't shake the feeling that we've only scratched the surface of a much larger problem. For every corrupt detective like Webb who gets caught, how many others are still out there, protecting the interests of wealthy developers at the expense of ordinary people fighting for their homes? The automated payments from Vincent Castellano's phone stopped the day we found him in that warehouse basement. But the real payment, justice for Tommy Nguyen, Jennifer Walsh, Robert Chen, and all the others who died fighting for their right to safe, affordable housing, that payment is still being made, one case at a time, one corrupt official at a time. Maria Santos approaches me as the celebration winds down. "Detective Chen," she says, "I wanted to thank you for not giving up on us. A lot of people would have walked away when things got dangerous." I shake her hand, thinking about all the times I'd considered doing exactly that. Someone had to make sure the real story came out. Vincent Castellano may have been a flawed man, but he didn't deserve what happened to him. And neither did any of you. As I drive home through the city streets, past the luxury developments and the struggling neighborhoods, I realize that this case has changed me. I've seen how easily the powerful can manipulate technology and corrupt institutions to silence those who threaten their interests. But I've also seen how ordinary people, when they stand together, can expose even the most sophisticated conspiracies. The selfies from Vincent Castellano's phone had been meant to create the illusion of a man at peace with his decision to disappear. Instead, they became the evidence that brought down a criminal organization and saved dozens of lives. Sometimes the truth hides in the most unexpected places, even in the fake smile of a man standing on a cliff, sending a message he never intended to send. This story is purely fictional,